And here we go.
It goes to Roberts. Roberts fighting through the paint, off the window. Here comes Malachi Smith. He'll lead it for the top. Oh! Time is expired. Henderson bumped. We play on. It's Garcia. Lets it go for the win. Dawson Garcia. Bottom.
Hello, friends. Welcome back into another episode of the D1 and Done Pod. This episode brought to you by the official Mountain West and SEC correspondents, the benefactors of the pod, the Hagen Hall boys. Make sure you give us a follow on our social media pages. That's Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We are D1 and Done Pod. You can leave a like, follow us there, leave a review across the podcast platforms, whether that's Spotify or Apple, and wherever you find your podcasts, or you can also find us on YouTube. Eventually, we will put these podcasts up in a video format. We do this over Zoom now, so we can see each other's bright and smiling faces. But until then, you'll just have to enjoy the sultry sounds of our voices. So I am Robbie Donahoe, Nick Mills, Dusty Mills, alongside once again. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome aboard. We are the D1 and Done Pod. The D1 portion of the show, Dusty played his college basketball at Kentucky and Ball State. Nick and I played basketball in high school, stopped there, and then went our separate ways. And Nick, how did you do playing intramural basketball at Kentucky?
It was actually pretty fun. My team sucked, or were not very good, so I got to be score 38. Not 30, but it was awesome.
Yeah,
I got to score a bunch of points while we went 2-10. It was sick.
And you got, as long as you got paid, that's all that matters, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I got paid under the table. It was great.
Good.
Yeah, I was trying to think, I don't know, Bradley Beal on the Wizards when they win 30 games a year. It was great. Highly recommend.
Fantastic. I remember I was my junior year. My fraternity intramural team made it to the championship game of the A-team bracket, basically all of Purdue in the fraternity leagues, and we got to actually play at Mackey Arena, which was really cool. So actually getting to play on that floor was awesome. Now, I played on the floor when I was younger, in grade school, for super hoops or whatever, but yeah. You don't want to hear it.
Oh, go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
I was saying, my problem was my fraternity was a bunch of soccer and baseball players, so we just had we had athletes, but not just basketball. And
we weren't a very athletic fraternity either. We had some pretty good players, but yeah. But what I was trying to say is nobody wants to hear about our intramural basketball prowess. We want to talk some college hoops, guys. 19 of the AP top 25 lost a game of shooty hoops this week. It was absolute carnage across the board in college basketball. The only 6 teams that did not lose a game this past week: Auburn, Duke, Houston, Purdue, Michigan State, Wisconsin, which is weird. 3 of the 6 come from the Big Ten. I don't know if that's an indictment on kind of how top-heavy the Big Ten is, or maybe just how things played out. But Nick, surprising that it kind of went this way, though?
Yeah, like you said, the overall theme, and I guess maybe not surprising because I think it was 3 Saturdays ago when it was the top dog Saturday, right, where everyone took care of business.
Yeah.
So maybe this was kind of the pendulum swinging back. But to your point, Rob, even Thursday, I think Dusty sent a stat, all 3 top 25 teams lost on Thursday. Even on Saturday, unranked UNC lost at home to Stanford. Baylor lost at home to TCU yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So it was everywhere, Robbie. So it was Carnage weekend. And you said 19 of the 25 lost.
19 of the 25, yeah, lost this past week.
And that includes was that on Saturday or throughout the week?
That was the entire week.
Okay, and you had it was part of the Carnage. You had teams like Alabama who lost at home to a ranked team and then won the road and being a ranked team.
Right.
It was just a lot of random stuff. Ole Miss themselves are kind of like that. Beat Bama but lost to Mississippi State. So it was just chaos. And this weekends like this are just the best.
Dusty found that really good stat that he texted to us on Thursday. Wasn't that the first time all ranked teams lost in the same day, and there was no ranked team that actually had a win?
It had to be a minimum of 3 ranked teams playing, all 3 lost. It was the first time, I think, since 91 or 93.
Jeez.
And only the 3rd time since the AP poll era started in the 40s.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. And it just goes to show you, I think, that there is quite a bit of parity in college basketball this year, but also I think it also goes to show you Auburn is our first consensus number 1 team from this season. They have shown it week in and week out, and they showed it this week especially without their Player of the Year candidate, Janai Broome. So we will go through the AP Top 25, and we'll talk about our rankings here a little bit later. But Nick, I want you to talk about your top story where there may be some guys flying under the radar that we need to learn more about in kind of the seasons they've been having.
Yeah, Robbie. So I don't know if I put this in notes or not. I had the same topic as you did. So I was really trying to think, okay, like what's a good thing to talk about? So the reason I thought of this conversation, which is like high major players having a great year that we've not talked about yet. And the reason I thought about this was Javon Small, which I'll get to him more later. Because the game I highlighted was Iowa State, West Virginia. He's been awesome all year, so I'll get to him more so later. But Robbie, the three other guys, again, I did major ball because he's probably guys more likely people are going to see. First off, Eric Dixon at Villanova. Do you guys know he's leading the nation in scoring?
Yeah, what is he having, 26 a game right now?
He's down to 24.7.
I say down. Come on, Eric.
He has been since like late November.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's because I went through his game log. Only 3 times he scored less than 20 points this year.
Wow.
So he's just bringing it and in those games too, he scored 16 or above.
Well,
so it's not like
it helps when you're 28 years old and you're playing college basketball.
He shouldn't get more credit for being like Perry Ellis right now. I could not believe he was coming back this year. He's been there forever. So shout ED and Nova. They're 5-3 in the conference. So.
He's 23. So I thought he was like 24 or 25. So at least he's not crazy. I mean, he's still old, but
he's still averaging more points per game than his age. So that's good. So keep that up, Eric.
Yeah, very impressive. Very good point.
Two other guys. I hope I say his name right. Maxine Renaud at Stanford. Who's just a double-double machine, 20.8 points per game, 11.6 boards per game. Like I said, just a double-double machine. He didn't hit the game-winning shot, but again, another great double-double against UNC over the weekend. Tar Heels, oof. They're
oh boy,
panicking here quickly. Hubert Davis, he might be having some uncomfortable conversations. And the other person, not he's a bad guy, just Northwestern basketball is not my favorite thing in the world. They have a Dookie at the helm. But Nick Martelli is a stud. He had the game winner on Thursday night. He's averaging 20 points per game on the dot, 23 points per game on the year, the last 3 games. He's doing very well. So some names to remember. And again, we'll get to Javon Small later, who I think has been the best of the 4, maybe other than Eric Dixon, but you get my point. So shout out the lads. And I just realized I just said a lot of smart schools in Stanford and in Northwestern. So shout out to the nerds out there.
Absolutely. Dusty, your top story from this past week of college basketball?
Well, it just changed because I just found out that Perry Ellis is still playing.
Really?
He plays for the, excuse my mispronunciation of a Japanese city, Fukui, Fukui.
I'm going to look this up.
Fukui. And their nickname is the Blowins.
I think it's pronounced Fukui.
Fukui, okay.
Fukui Blowins. Wow.
Yeah, worst lines I can think of.
What a name.
Mine was really just touching on, again, the parody, the craziness, I was looking at the coaches poll skating earlier, or rankings earlier. And if you get a chance, go to ESPN where they show who went up and who went down. Only Auburn and Kentucky stayed in the same spot. So it's just arrows pointing everywhere. It literally looks like the stock market. So, yeah. I mean, the ones that stood out to me were, to me, it's a full craziness. And, Auburn, Duke, to me, are a level above, which is amazing that they played already. Creighton finally being back in the mix, I guess you could call it. Mm-hmm. They had them, if they was like the NFL wild card, they'd be in the very bottom right spot with, no chance of winning a national title. Georgia hanging with Auburn. I think they are really solidifying themselves as a legit SEC contender. Very physical team. I won't necessarily say fun to watch, but them hanging with Auburn, not a big moral victory guy, but I would call one.
They're kind of like a knockout, drag out kind of team. They're not aesthetically pleasing to watch, but they find ways to win games, I feel like, at Georgia.
Yeah, so that, and then Xavier finally taking down Marquette. I was really blown off by that one.
Shocking, yeah.
And then my fourth one I had, Robbie's your Boilers just really pulling it together right now. So taking down Oregon, I think, is a great win. Oregon's been kind of hot to hold as well, but it's fun. It's so much fun just having all the games on Saturday. You're checking your phone, like, shoot, now I got to change this screen or YouTube TV. I need these 4 games on. It feels like March already. And this season, just the chaos of the parity, conference realignment, putting all these great teams in the same conference at the same time, so you're playing more of these teams all the time, and we fall down the non-conference schedule, which my biggest fear is moving forward if schools are swayed to weaken their non-conference if they're missing the bubble in early March. But just the absolute parity and the fun that it is, especially on a huge football weekend. to have so many storylines in college basketball is just fun.
And I'm glad you brought up Purdue because I do want to talk about the Boilers for a little bit here. 7-game win streak. Impressive win on the road at Oregon, 65-58, and obviously they beat Washington earlier in the week, so they went 2-0 on the West Coast trip. Take a look. Their upcoming schedule. Their next 3 games are at home. They play Ohio State coming up Tuesday night. They play Michigan at home Friday night, IU at home the following Friday night. Then they go to Iowa and then home to USC. That's their next 5 games. I think 4-1 is pretty confident it's going to happen. But I mentioned it in a pod, I think 2 weeks ago. Remember when we did our New Year's resolutions pod where I wanted Purdue to get tougher? I don't know what switch has flipped with this team, but they have become so physical, and they've become this is one of the best defensive Purdue teams I think I've seen, and it's happened just in a span of the last month. I don't know what has changed, but with how much this team has come together defensively and physically, all of it has to be centered around the fact that Braden Smith should be in the conversation for National Player of the Year. He is playing that well, and he has been that impactful. He is averaging almost 10 assists a game right now, and he's averaging 15 points and nearly 2 steals a game. He's doing everything for this team, and at this point right now, if Purdue keeps playing this well, I mean, for a while there, I was thinking, Purdue might get a 5 or 6 seed if they're lucky. They're a 2 seed borderline, potentially playing for a 1 if they continue to play this well. The problem is that the Big Ten is just not great. But there is a stretch after the USC game on February 7th where they go at Michigan, Wisconsin at home, at Michigan State, at IU. That's when we're really going to learn about Purdue. And it wouldn't surprise me if they start getting all this hype and then they win their next 2 games, moving inside the top 10, and then they hit kind of the freshman rough patch of, man, they only go 2-2 in that stretch. So I wonder, when is the adversity going to hit? Because it kind of felt like it was hitting after they played A&M and then got beat down by Auburn. Then they just rolled Toledo. They won rather easily at Minnesota, a team that just beat Michigan this past week, which made no sense at all. So it feels like this Purdue team is pretty dang good. But I'm cautious because it seems like defensively they're taking advantage of some teams that just aren't shooting the ball very well right now on them.
Yeah, first of all, Robbie, you could argue maybe the best win of the day on Saturday. Again, to go West Coast trip, win at Oregon, and this was important for Purdue too because you mentioned they had a winning streak going, and it was a pretty easy schedule. But again, they beat every team by double digits, so they took care of business.
But they beat the bottom half of the Big Ten. I mean, the only good Big Ten win they had before that was Maryland, and that was back in December. Like they'd been feasting on the bottom half lately.
Right, and this was their first real okay, what are you? And I was with our other buddies, a Purdue fan. Shout out to Cuzzo, who went to Kentucky with me. He was not feeling good about the game, and just for them to come out and they, like you said, there's just more physical in them, and an Oregon team that's kind of been hot and cold, and especially Wednesday night. It's not like Purdue came out firing either. They looked pretty sleepy coming out of the gates on Wednesday night. So to turn around and take care of business, give up 58 points to an Oregon team that can really score the ball, so. Hell of a win, Robbie.
Really big win, yeah. Slowly but surely, this team is becoming defensively a juggernaut, which that's without Zach Edey. It's pretty incredible how they've been able to just flip the script on being a very poor defensive team where Auburn just carved them up, and now they're stringing stops together. They're hitting kill shots, which is that 10-0 run. They're doing that consistently. And what's funny is, so I got KenPom up right now. They're currently 21st in defensive efficiency rating, which is really good for that kind of a Purdue team. I was shocked just running through numbers. Anything that stuck out to me. UConn is 127th in defensive efficiency on KenPom right now. Can you believe that?
And for reference, Kentucky's 82nd. They've given up 100 twice this year. So the fact they're 127th.
So, and that's a good opportunity for me. We will get back to sidelines and picking one game here, but this is a good opportunity to kind of hit the panic button topic that I wanted us to go to. Is UConn on anyone's panic button list right now?
Not for me. I mean, they're definitely a different team without Lane McNeely.
Yes.
So they need to get him back. But yeah, no, I mean, they're still a top, 15, 20 team to me.
Okay. Dusty, are you pushing the panic button on UConn at all?
No, I'd want to. They scare me too much just in general. And what they've been the last 2 years, last decade, really. Just always just in the mix and involved. Yeah, they need to get him. What do we know the time length on his injury?
I think they said a month when
Yeah,
it first happened.
it was a month initially, which is funny because everyone was talking about, oh, it's going to be a month. They're not playing anyone the next month or so. UConn's going to be fine. Well, about that.
I love that voice you just did, Robbie.
Yeah, that's my sarcastic voice. There hasn't really been an update on him. It's just it's high ankle sprain. Yes.
Yeah, their initial report on January 4th was he's going to quote miss weeks.
Yeah, and I imagine that
early told reporters that he could maybe return by the end of January. So that's all we've heard since.
I'm thinking optimistically, probably beginning of February is what it looks like. But also, is that a larger indictment on UConn that they need a true freshman back to be a good enough team to compete and be a top 4 seed?
Especially a freshman they weren't initially supposed to get to.
Right. Can you imagine him at IU? Like that? He's almost like the perfect guy they kind of need, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Diarra's been good for him. He stepped up a little bit in his absence, but yeah, this is just kind of what they are. I feel like just kind of like I said, 15th, 20th, and again, there's Dusty kind of mentioned their standards just ridiculous now because you go back natties.
Yeah,
dominant last year. So, especially in the Big East too. That's not like the Big East. I would say is down this year, right? Like
yes.
Marquette is getting at home. The bottom of the barrel, like the Paul Georgetown, Butler's still bad. So, and Seton Hall, shout to them too, are pretty bad. So
don't look now. But St. John's is in first place in the Big East.
Mm-hmm.
Year 2 Pitino, everyone.
Slick Rick.
It's a thing. Dusty, who are you pressing the panic button on right now? Now that we've talked to UConn.
I have a new one, but 2 of them are the ones I talked about already, and I think they're combined 0-4 since I talked about them with the 2 SEC teams being Oklahoma and Arkansas.
Oh, gosh, Oklahoma, geez, yeah.
Yeah, and I just said in that conference there are going to be 1 or 2 teams that great, 14-2 non-conference schedule wherever it is, but you're going to come into the gauntlet, and then if you start to lose the locker room too, and I still don't understand what Cal's doing with that team. They're horrible to watch.
Janelle Davis is broken.
Yeah, what has happened to him?
He's broken. It's insane.
My new team, though, that we kind of touched on last week, and they have enough talent to turn around, is UCLA right now.
Oh, gosh.
It's a tough stretch. You have Mick Cronin yelling at the players, then gets ejected the next game.
Did you hear his?
Later.
Yeah, okay, good. I was going to say, I won't mention too much more than about his. Okay, yeah. But, yeah, UCLA, God,
they finally ended their losing streak. They had lost 4 in a row till I think Friday they got their win.
Mm-hmm. The only thing I'll mention about that is, so we'll hear obviously more about Mick Cronin in his press conference from this past weekend. He kind of complained about how the West Coast teams had to travel to the East Coast, and it's not the same as the East Coast traveling to the West Coast.
Rob, you guys should hit on that. Mine's actually a completely separate quote.
Okay,
if you want
so
to dig into that.
Mick Cronin basically there was someone who kind of asked a leading question. I didn't think it was a bad question, but there was a reporter that asked him, is it the same for East Coast teams to come to the West Coast as it is for West Coast to the East Coast? And he's basically went in this big tirade of, you can't be serious with that question. It was a legitimate question. But what I find funny is he just came up with all these excuses then about, well, it's not the same. The East Coast Midwest schools, they get to come out to sunny Los Angeles, and they probably think it's great. And so they have more to lose, and it's not as easy for the West Coast to come to the East Coast than vice versa. Hey, spoiler alert, Mick. The ACC teams are not having any troubles from the West Coast coming to win on the East Coast. Stanford winning at North Carolina didn't have any issues with that whatsoever. Okay, and there's other Cal has been able to win on the road too.
And have you seen Stanford's travel schedules and how they work?
Crazy.
So if you don't know, I don't know why this is a thing. Stanford, the only way they can get from one place to another is on a 37-person plane that has to make a stop on the way. So it takes 9 hours for them to get from California to North Carolina.
I don't want to hear one more complaint or whining session from Mick Cronin about travel for his West Coast team, because Stanford didn't have any issues and they won at North Carolina. So it's very rich that Mick Cronin would whine and complain about the West Coast, not come to the East Coast. It's not California. Everyone likes coming out here. Shut your mouth, Mick Cronin. Okay, and we had a conversation about this on our text thread where I don't know how it got lost in translation that apparently I liked Mick Cronin. It's not. I don't like Mick Cronin, okay? But now I just think he's not that I necessarily dislike him, but he's just like a whiny baby now. This is like that press conference it felt very John Calipari for me. Just whining about something that just didn't need to be whined about. Dusty, thoughts?
Well, I was just going to say, speaking of whiny coaches, Green Bay and Doug Gottlieb officially have the worst record in D1 basketball right now.
2-18.
I think they've lost like 15 straight. Here you go. I just pulled it up.
Yeah.
Mick Cronin is someone who I've had coaches like that. I don't like it. It's not my style. When I coach, I was definitely more of the motivation, optimism. I mean, kind of what Pope claims to do at Kentucky.
Yeah.
But Rob and I played I guess Nick never played for our high school coach. But it was definitely a Bob Knight mentality of, you suck, and when I tell you suck, you're going to get better immediately because you're going to self-motivate. It's like you're talking, again, as we always say, 2019, some parallels in the world. But you're talking to these kids that some of them are probably days like, why did I come here? So I don't like the look of it. I think that's something you keep internally.
It works. It works a lot more when you're winning. When you're not winning, it goes badly quickly.
Yep.
So, yeah, I agree. You can start pressing the panic button a little on UCLA. Nick, your panic button team was my second team, but I'll just let you take the floor on your panic button team. My gosh.
Yeah, so this team's probably still not in danger of missing the tournament, even though it's getting closer than it was coming into this week. But it's the Gonzaga Bulldogs. And again, the reason I have him on there, and Robbie's showing his doggo on the screen.
Rizzo!
Hi, Rizzo!
What a good boy!
Hi, Rizzo! Go Yankees! But
how dare you?
The Gonzaga Bulldogs. Again, I thought this team was going to be like a 1 seed. I thought it was going to be like they brought everyone back.
Yep.
I thought it was going to be like 30-2. Is this the team that wins? Mark through the Natty. And here we are. For people who didn't see, Gonzaga 0-2 this week. Lost at Oregon State Thursday night, which not great, but not terrible.
Oregon State's not bad.
Mm-hmm. And then Saturday night, they lose versus Santa Clara on their home court, like on Gonzaga's home court, and gave up 103 points.
Yeah.
To the Gonzaga Bulldogs. That is a quad 2 loss. They are 14-6. They are 2-5 in quadrant 1. Those wins are versus at San Diego State, who's 4-3 in the Mountain West, and Baylor, who again has been very disappointing themselves this year.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially they have 2 great wins to begin with, and now they have a quad 2 loss. They're 4-6 in top 2 quadrants. And so going in, and they have only 4 more quad 1 opportunities. So there are still chances. Again, they could very much easily win their conference tournament, obviously. I don't know. Going into Saturday, they were on the 6th line. So it's not included Santa Clara loss. And, other teams are going to make up ground because, again, Gonzaga only has so many quadrant 1 opportunities, whereas, picking any school in the SEC or Big 10 or Big 12, they're going to get their opportunities to move past them and stuff. So I just, again, for a team that had national championship aspirations and a team that can't afford to lose to a Portland on the road or anything like that, you're kind of playing with fire now. And one more thing, so on my way home from Lexington with me and our cousin up there on Field 68, and Jeff Goodman says something very interesting. So again, I don't think he just throws out there without any sort of reporting. He said, do not be surprised if this is Mark Few's last year. And I thought
Really?
I did not see that coming at all. Again, that could just be a hunch. I would imagine he has some sort of inside knowledge on that. Again, he didn't predict it, but I just thought that's another reason to panic potentially for Gonzaga.
Yeah.
Especially that surprised me because I thought Mark Few would die trying to get his national championship, but by all accounts he's not. He wants the national championship, but he's not. It's not like hell bent on it. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but you get my point.
Sure.
So yeah, Gonzaga. That's a lot going on. Tough week. That's a weird report from Goodman, and yeah, I thought this team's gonna be really freaking good. They brought everyone back, and they're here. Santa
Clara was a 14.5 point underdog in that game. And they were also plus 1,000 money line.
And again, you just lost on the road the game before. You thought they'd come out firing.
Yeah. It was just very, very odd, but just they are so poor defensively. And with their length and skill and ability, they're not a super deep team, but they're 8. They're 8. They're starting 5 and they're 3 off the bench. It is uber talented. There's no reason why this team should be losing to Santa Clara at home. Never. It just it honestly it's massively head scratching. It doesn't make any sense.
And again, they have no great win. They have a couple good ones, so like it's just been a weird year for them. They've lost every opportunity, like great opportunity they have, and like I said, it's not like much more is coming.
They're 14-6. They are 4-6 in quads 1 and 2 games. I mean, basically, they're leaning heavily on the Baylor, San Diego State wins,
which were both within like first 2 weeks of the season.
Right,
too.
exactly. They have. I mean, their last 5 wins against teams in the net: 79, 307, 156, 318, 211. And that UCLA loss hurts too. And you didn't beat UConn either. You obviously lost to Kentucky. So they really don't have a ton of great wins. If it wasn't for them blitzing Baylor, I would be concerned about them being on the bubble and maybe not making it in. They're going to find a way to figure it out, I think. They're just too talented, but
they're one bad loss away from, I think, really be on the considerably on the bubble.
And I mean, don't look now, but you go to Portland coming up at the end of the week. Portland's 4-14, 318 in the net. If you lose that game, I mean, duck and cover, because that's not good. After that, you have Oregon State at home, and then you go to St. Mary's, a team that has not lost in the West Coast Conference yet. Some alarm bells better be going off for Gonzaga, because like those last 2 losses, albeit, again, not against bad teams, but those are teams you should be beating.
Right.
But yeah,
especially we thought it was like top 5 going in.
Yeah.
Like, I cannot believe this is how they've looked so far.
Did you guys have them in your Final Four? I think one of you did. Was it?
I think we both did. Yeah.
Okay, and I didn't.
But winning it, actually.
I think possibly. I mean,
maybe have them winning than that.
Well, I had Baylor in the Final Four, so it's like it all evens out at some point. But still, like, ugh, yuck. I'm pressing the panic button on Ohio State, and it's not necessarily just because of preseason expectations. I thought the expectations at the start of the season were pretty tempered for Jake Diebler and the team. Ohio State's a solid team. But they're now 3-8 against quads 1 and 2 teams, 36 in the net. They're 10-8 overall. That's it. Their best win right now is that neutral floor win against Kentucky. If they did not have that neutral floor win against Kentucky, they would not be in the tournament right now, in my opinion. Because other than that, their only other quads 1 and 2 wins are a neutral against Texas and at Minnesota. That loss to IU at home was not. If they get to March and they're sitting on the bubble, they're going to be looking back at that game and being like, "Gosh, dang, we missed this opportunity." And also the home loss to Pitt, like that's another one too that they really should have had. So I don't know if necessarily like many people considered Ohio State to be, a top 6-7 seed. They started it off at the season like that when they beat Texas, and everyone kind of got put on alert like, whoa, this Ohio State team might be pretty good. And then they obviously beat Kentucky when Bruce Thornton had that crazy game. But ever since then, it's just been a little disappointing. You lose at home to Michigan State. Okay, fine. Very lucky that they won at Minnesota. That game went to double overtime. Lose at home to Oregon, lose at Wisconsin, and lose at IU. They've lost their last 3 games by a grand total of 5 points. They can't close games right now. And that's not a good sign when you're going to West Lafayette coming up Tuesday night, a place that has not been friendly to Ohio State in recent years. They've had success in the past, but when the game gets tight down the stretch, that's when Ohio State loses at Purdue. So I'm pressing the panic button on their tournament chances, not necessarily on the team or like Jake Diebler as a whole, but I was expecting a little bit more out of them because now they've lost 4 or 5. Even though they've played a really tough schedule, you thought they would have gotten at least 1 or 2 of those at home, and that IU loss really stings now.
Yeah, Robbie, not much more to add. We thought they turned a corner after being the Kitty Cats. And like you said, 2 wins since then, Indiana State by 20, and a double overtime lucky winner against Minnesota. They're their only 2 wins.
Very lucky to win that one. That one could have been bad, but the Maryland loss then just looks awful now, losing by 24 at Maryland, and then obviously they got worked by Auburn, but that's not shocking. Everyone's losing to Auburn by 30. But
hey, beat Green Bay though.
Good win, quality win. Yeah. So okay, those are the teams we're pressing the panic button on. We didn't include North Carolina. That loss to Stanford by North Carolina. Oh boy.
Well, to me, they're almost past panic at this point.
Yeah.
They're just not good.
No.
at this point.
Yeah, they're not. They're 32nd in KenPom right now, which is pretty shocking.
And I believe only one quad 1-1 now is against UCLA. Who just
but thank goodness they came back and won that game. If they didn't have that UCLA win, ooh. We'll talk about bracketology. We'll talk about the bracket matrix and kind of the bubble as a whole here in a little bit. But let's get to the one game you guys want to recap from the last week. Nick, I'm going to start with you because I think out of all of the surprising results, I would say this one maybe stood out the most from the ones that occurred over the weekend.
Yeah, Robbie, my game is West Virginia 64, Iowa State 57. I'm sure a lot of people missed this one because it was 5 o'clock on ESPN Plus, and the football's going on. And 5 o'clock's a weird time. I think it's usually 4 and 6, so it kind of just got suckered in the middle.
Right.
Either way, West Virginia was awesome. Javon Small, if you don't know about him, he's a stud.
Learn the name, man.
Learn the main. He was 27-7-5. Only one other person was in double digits in this game, by the way. And we've mentioned Tucker DeVries has been out for a while now.
Right.
The other best player, Hansberry. If there was a big three, that's kind of it right there. He's missed a couple games. So Small is really a pick up the slack, and he's been so good all year. Like I say, he's been picking up the slack for everyone else. And West Virginia as a whole now has wins over Gonzaga, our guys, Arizona, Georgetown, and the two big ones at Kansas, and now Iowa State at home. West Virginia, just what a year for them, because, again, it was so bleak with the way Huggins ended all that. And I think Darren DeVries, National Coach of the Year, ? I mean, I don't know what the preseason expectations were. And I don't know. I just threw it kind of out there. I think it's like him. I think Pope's up there. I think Pat Kelsey's up there. But I think DeVries is definitely not a conversation because, again, I did not see this coming from West Virginia at all. And, again, it all starts with Javon Small. And especially an Iowa State team who had only lost to Auburn on neutral court, and they were up 20 that game.
Right.
So shout out the Mountaineers. Morgantown's back. I love to see it for the boys.
I'd throw Dennis Gates in there as well from Missouri, and then Mark Byington, the coach at Vanderbilt. Like, those have been the most impressive coaching jobs for me across college basketball this year. So I'm right there with you. But yeah, for how much we talked about Iowa State and their offense when they beat Kansas, only managing 57 points at West Virginia is pretty surprising. But also, I mean, when we think of West Virginia, we don't really think of being a sound defensive team, but it seems like every time I've watched them defensively, they've been exceptional. Like, it's been shocking how good defensively they are. Like, they held Kansas to 61 points in that win, held Oklahoma State to 50. The Arizona game, I mean, that was Arizona that was just on a heater there for some reason. Colorado to 70, Houston to 70, even though it wasn't Houston. I mean, they've played games in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and it's been impressive. So I'm right there with you. This West Virginia team is, man, They might be something. If you get Tucker DeVries back, whoa. Like, this could be a team you do not want to see in the tournament.
Yeah, what's all the stupid cliches everyone says? Veteran guard play and good defense. They have all that. And a coach who's, I know it's not the high major level, but a coach who's won before, made the tournament before too.
Very much so. Dusty, game that stood out from this past week?
Yeah, well, I'm going to give a shout out to the school, and then we can talk about the game real quick. Because with this school, what's going on right now, I'm going to list some great names. Shane Foster's not walking through there. Matt not. John Jenkins is not. Who's the white guard back in the day?
Riley LaChance!
Right?
Get him the ball!
Brad Tinsley's not. Bob the Snake Grace from the 60s is not.
Ooh.
Jermaine Beal.
Another good one. Scottie Pippen Jr.
AJ Ogilvy.
AJ Ogilvy.
From the early 2000s, Vandy was always a tough team that would always be like a 4 seed in the tournament, usually lost in the second round. But I would say they have found their way back. They beat Tennessee by 1 at home. It was the first sellout in Memorial. No, only third sellout in Memorial since 2019, and they stormed the court. So, which sounds very dangerous there.
It is, because you have to jump up to get to the court.
Yeah. I don't think Jason Edwards gets enough credit for them. He had 18 or 20, I think, that night. But held off a run by Tennessee late. I saw it's Tennessee's only second time giving up more than 70 points this year.
Yeah.
That was of Vandy not scoring the last 4 minutes. So, and they've also lost both games. So Tennessee, I would say, not worried about, but seemed to be struggling on the road. So that lost to Vandy in conference play. Good for Vandy. That's awesome for them. They now have a big week. They have Bama Tuesday and then host Kentucky on Saturday.
Yeah.
Yeah, their next 7 games are insane.
Yeah. So that gauntlet, you need to get off to a 3-2 start if you have a chance. Because if you're SEC. What isn't LSU? I think has one win. Not that their world beers by means, but you already got yourself in that hole. And if you go through a run like that on the schedule, your season's basically complete. A la Arkansas and Oklahoma.
I know we didn't include Tennessee on the press the panic button, and I wouldn't press the panic button on Tennessee.
Well, not for them. I mean, even that. I always remember that Florida team that won the second back-to-back titles. At one point, they lost 3 straight games in February.
Right.
So they can turn around. You're going to have 2 week stretch.
Is Tennessee the returning champs, Crab? Did I miss that?
Yeah, the second year.
That's what I'm saying.
It's Tennessee. Yes.
It's Tennessee. No, Tennessee's not. But they have a bunch of Perry Ellis's themselves. I feel like too. I cannot believe Ziegler is not 30.
I know.
So they really need Chaz Lanier to be like a 20 to 25 points per game scorer, and he hasn't been that lately. Now he had a pretty solid game against Vandy, 4 for 6 from 3 at 17, but they can't afford Chaz Lanier to have anything below 20 points and be comfortable going into winning a game. They were exceptionally balanced against Vandy, but they're also not a super deep team. They only go about 6-7 deep. So I worry about Tennessee's longevity. They need to get healthy, but I mean, you can't expect Felix Okpara to score 16 points a game. That's not going to happen. Now, Igor Milicic is a very good player. He can put up those kinds of numbers. And Zakai Ziegler is another good player, but also another guy that's not going to score a ton. So I wonder for Tennessee, are they going to get enough scoring to be able to beat teams and win games down the stretch? That's what I worry about them. Defensively, I'm not worried about them. They're gonna figure that side out, but that's the area that I'm concerned with Tennessee going forward. But my game I want to pick out is the first time in the history of the Mississippi State Ole Miss rivalry where both teams were ranked in the top 25 for a game of men's basketball, and the game did not disappoint whatsoever. 84-81 final, Mississippi State over Ole Miss, went to OT. There was one stretch, one play in the game. I believe it was, I can't remember exactly when it was. It was either at the end of second half or the beginning of overtime, where Ole Miss had just gotten a steal and they were coming down the other end, about to get a layup. RJ Melendez has this incredible block at the rim. It was coming in transition, basically like a chase down block, LeBron James like. And then they get the rebound, goes back the other way. They toss a lob to Cam Matthews, who instead of dunking it, decides to pass it over to Riley Kugel, wide open in the corner for a 3, and hits it. Ever since then, it was like, okay, State's going to win this game. And sure enough, they did, 84-81. It was one of the most entertaining and enjoyable games of basketball that I've seen between these two teams, because when State and Ole Miss play, it is knockout, dragout. It really is, because these two teams and these two programs, these two fan bases, they absolutely hate each other. There is no love whatsoever between the two schools, and it descends on the players and the team when they play each other. It's kind of the same thing in football, but in basketball it does the same as well. It got a little chippy at times too. You expected that, but what was even more impressive for me was the fact that Josh Hubbard was 2 for 13 from the field, and you still found a way to win the game. Riley Kugel was awesome. Keyshawn Murphy is a freaking dude. Like they got so many contributions from so many other players. Like RJ Melendez is a perfect fit for that team, and when he was playing at Illinois a couple years ago, I loved his game. He needed to find the right spot to take advantage of his skills and abilities, and sure enough, I mean he's been a perfect fit for what Chris Jansen wanted to do at Mississippi State. So shout out to the Bulldogs. Shout out to getting a big win over Ole Miss. And then Ole Miss, got to shout out them too, getting that big win over Alabama during the week. So Rebels, they were able to split this week. That's a win in my book. So two teams you don't want to see come tournament time. I actually had Mississippi State ranked inside of my top 10 because I just thought that win over Ole Miss was so impressive, even though they got blitzed by Auburn. But Dusty, I want your reactions, because I remember on the Check Please pod, you said Ole Miss was going to win. I said, no way, State's going to win. Well, look what happened.
I'll tell you what happened.
Oh, no. What's about to happen?
Yeah, Dusty just reached down under his table.
Uh-oh. What is this going to be?
Which, could be
Does not hear that?
I can't hear it.
It's not making a single noise.
It's not making a noise at all.
For people at home, it's a cowbell of some sort.
Dusty's holding a cowbell.
It's loud as hell in my ear.
Somehow
is this like in Polar Express where like not everyone can hear the bell ring?
It's ringing.
I can't hear it.
That's wild.
I'll just ring.
My ears are literally like shaking right now.
I'll ring it on my end.
Robbie, do it again. I'm not sure I heard yours either.
Is there something that?
No.
Somehow it's being. So somehow it's being filtered out right now by the audio.
So even Zoom is anti-Bulldogs.
I can't believe it. Unbelievable. This is outrageous.
Sorry, Mr. VC fans. I did it for you. I have the cowbell, and on our video you can see it, but apparently the world does not want your victory.
Regardless.
Can I ask a question for you guys?
Go for it.
You guys have mentioned Vanderbilt and Ole Miss, and no one's mentioned Missouri yet. And I bring them up because I had Missouri ranked. And for you guys had some interesting. You guys both love Vanderbilt this week. I thought it was very interesting.
I just like the story of Vanderbilt. I think they're going to lose both games this week, so that's why I wanted to put them in the top 25 because I think they're going to drop out after this week. But I would imagine. I think Mizzou's going to probably win at Texas coming up tomorrow night, Tuesday night, and then that Ole Miss game's going to be huge for them. Like Missouri's next stretch of games: Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Tennessee, A&M. Whoa.
Yeah. I mean, they're kind of like Vanderbilt. They have another, like you said, just tough stretch coming up. Yeah. I thought Missouri, I had them ranked over Vandy. I had Vandy ranked. By the way, Missouri did beat Vandy head-to-head. Just want to throw that out there.
Don't care.
But the real one, Crab, do you hate the Magnolia State? You don't have the Rebels ranked after they won at Bama this week.
Look, there's only 25 teams that can be in there.
I'm just waiting for one of my Ole Miss friends to see you not ranking the Rebels, and they're going to come after us for that now.
Bama.
So we got.
They lost in overtime at State.
Speaking of rankings, I think this is amazing. If you look at the AP poll,
guess he just dodges my question, by the way.
Do what?
Yeah, you dodged the question, but it's all right.
Go ahead.
Guess who got one more vote than Gonzaga?
Irvine.
Vanderbilt. Never thought we'd see that in the last decade.
I didn't either.
Doors. Which,
crazy.
By the way, you mentioned earlier, like I know Vanderbilt has a rightfully still not a good reputation, but they were rolling in the late 2000s, early 2010s.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
People don't remember. They were a legit program every year.
They won Didn't they win the SEC regular season one year? I know they won the tournament before, but did they win?
Oh, they undefeated Kentucky, or not undefeated, the one-loss Kentucky team that won the national title. They beat them in the SEC championship.
I remember that. Yeah. Okay. Speaking of which,
looking up, Rob, you can continue.
Yeah. Speaking of which, talking about the AP Top 25, it is out right now as we talk about polls. There are a ton of movement in both AP and coaches polls and our poll as well. The new, maybe the surprise is having Louisville in the top 25 now. The Cardinals are now 25th. They have won, I believe, 8 straight games, if I'm not mistaken. But it's the ACC, so take that with a grain of salt. Memphis was one of the big movers. They dropped 6 spots. Wisconsin moves up 6 spots. Purdue moves up 6 spots. And then in our polls, we actually had some uniformity across the top 4. We were all the same in the top 4. That is Auburn 1, Duke 2, Iowa State 3, Alabama 4. We're all pretty even on that front.
I had Iowa State Duke flip for the record.
Correct. Yes. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. You guys were a little higher on Purdue. I'm not putting them in top 10 just or close to top 10 just yet. I had Mississippi State up at 7. I dropped Tennessee to 8. We kind of were pretty similar on those fronts. Before we go into other sidelines, we are now, so it's November, December, we're in January, and then it's February, and then it's supposed to be Izzo. Do we believe Michigan State's the real deal here?
They're such an interesting team. I mentioned many times, they don't shoot many threes, they don't make many threes. They took 10 threes against Illinois on Sunday.
Yeah.
I think I like it. I love how Izzo's saying F it to all these analytics. Like, I think they're legit. Would I pick them to win and go to Final Four? No. But I think I have them ranked 9th or 10th. I think they're one of the 10 best teams, 10 top 10 or 15 best teams in the country. They're on some winning streak right now, though, right? 11
games, I think. Is that right? 11 games win streak?
Yeah, they've lost to Memphis and Maui and Kansas on neutral site.
Right.
Only 2 losses. They've not lost since November 26th. And honestly, in this winning streak, too, they've kicked the crap out of some teams, too.
They have. The Illinois win was pretty impressive. Now, there was some pretty questionable officiating in that game. I don't know if anyone else watched, but
just ask Brad Underwood about it.
Yeah, Yakachon has had some terrible foul calls on him. Like there was one where there was two of them where he didn't even touch the guy, and the Michigan State player fell over, and they called a foul on him. Like it was. I don't know what was going on in that game, but still, yeah, Michigan State I think is really good. Other sidelines from the.
Last time we had a Michigan State team that had a 16-2 record and kind of are under the radar. It's almost wild.
Probably well before 2000, I bet.
Because I think we talked about this when Michigan State lost to UNC. Illinois is their first ranked win of the year.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably the only reason they're under radar. Because I agree with you, Crab. They really, just no one's really been talking about them at all.
I think everyone kind of wants to because Michigan State is, they're such a fun team to embrace because they kind of do it the old school way, and Izzo's still doing it the old school way. But yeah, agreed. This Michigan State team seems like they're the real deal. Okay.
I love Fears, by the way. I love that point guard.
Jeremy Fears is really, really good. And Jace Richardson
is a point guard.
Yeah, Jace Richardson's been really good. Jaden Aiken's starting to finally figure it out, I think, offensively. So yeah, and then Cohen Carr is, gosh, so much fun to watch. Like, yeah, a lot of good pieces of the Michigan State team. Other sidelines from this past week of college basketball. I'll let you, Nick, since you had the boots on the ground, I want you to talk about Kentucky, Alabama. Are you concerned about the Wildcats defensively and how that could hold back their potential of maybe making a Final Four?
Yeah, I don't know how you can't be. They're 82nd, we mentioned earlier, in defensive rating. It is what it is. I really don't see it getting better this year. Alabama last year made the Final Four, and they were not quite good defensively. Miami 2 years prior. So, yeah, I don't know. We're January 20th. I don't see it getting better. I think that one of the main reasons is they struggle so much with defensive rebounding.
Yeah.
They give up so many second, third chances. So they're probably tied hand in hand in that. But, so, yeah, I don't know how it couldn't be. But just the game itself, no real panic from it. Honestly, I thought it was two great teams playing. Bama coming off a loss. Bama just made more plays than Kentucky did. They're the more physical, better team, tougher team. They made the plays Kentucky didn't. Disappointed to lose as always, but not like, hit the alarm bell or anything like that. So, yeah, the defense is definitely a problem, but the game itself, good win Bama. They're the better team. 15
offensive rebounds from Alabama. That's certainly a concern. Dusty, what did you think of Kentucky? Is this a cause for concern defensively for them? Are they just going to have to outscore teams to win now?
Potentially. The rebounding is very concerning, and I can't tell you how often we're watching a game, and I'm usually watching with my dad, and we're just screaming, just please box out. That's all we're asking for.
Yeah.
Because it's like they're undersized or under, even body size-wise. They have the athletes, they have the length, but if you just watch the paint, it's the whole I'm going to out-jump everyone. And then when you have like a Texanian that comes in and just bodies you a little bit, gets you out of the paint, and yeah, you can't be giving up 15-second point opportunities to begin with. So I don't know if I'd say concerned. They are a veteran team. I think that will go a long way. Yeah, you could claim in 3 months they're still gelling in a bit and finding their identity and finding who truly is. Is it Jackson Robinson that's going to come off and go get them 25 when they need it? Like, I think that's kind of more of an issue. But Coastal, they just move the ball so well. No team would want to play them.
No.
And for me, that Alabama loss kind of that and the Florida win are kind of just, you get one and don't get the other one, and I don't think too much about it this part of the season, just with how the schedule they're sorting out.
This was, I will kind of be concerned for you because this was kind of a symptom of Mark Pope's BYU team from last year where Duquesne just crushed them on the offensive boards in that tournament game. So that's where I'm slightly concerned that this continues to be a jarring issue, and it shouldn't be because Andrew Carr, Otega Owe, Amari, they've got size, they've got physicality. Put a body into someone for Pete's sakes. It's not that hard.
Real quick, so I've attended 2 home games. Florida, the last 2 home games I've attended, Florida and Alabama, they've given up 100 points each, 202 points total in those 2 games. Which granted, Florida, Bama might be 2 of the 5 best offenses you'll play.
Yeah.
Granted, but still, that's just a hilarious stat to think out loud. And Andrew Carr, I don't think he could guard any of us 3. That's another issue.
That's definitely a problem. Any other?
Nelson. By the way, credit to Bama. Sears and Nelson were awesome.
They played great. Any other sidelines? Any other storylines that we're missing from this past week? We mentioned St. John's, UCF very nearly beating Houston. That would have been a big win for them. Talked about
Shout out
Stanford.
our Hoosier fans. Big win Friday night.
IU, boy, that was a win they desperately needed. I'm not sure there were very many IU fans. I'm sure IU fans were probably happy they won, but I think some of them are probably disappointed because they want to keep losing so they can be done with Mike Woodson. It's this weird Sophie's choice. It's like, do you want to... I'm just going to move past that. Just concerning, to say the least. It's concerning, but if their fans want to go to the tournament, that was a win they desperately needed, and they got it. So maybe there's some life left with this Hoosier team.
Which reminds me of the Eagles with Nick Sirianni.
Why is that?
The fan base seems to want to get rid of him, but then when you win 10 straight games or whatever, it's like, well, maybe he is good at his job. So
that's a great call, Crab.
That
really is.
Bobby's like, yeah, if we sacrifice one bad loss and get rid of Woodson right now, where's your head go as a fan?
Right.
So.
Very much so. Speaking of tournament chances, a good opportunity to update bracketology and look at bracket matrix. Guys, the bubble is horrifically soft. If you go on a little bit of a run towards the end of the season, you can play your way into the tournament. Normally, for those who don't know, bracketmatrix.com basically combines all of the major bracketology predictor sites and puts them all together into one. Normally,
love it. It's great site.
Very helpful. Normally, you see a long list of other at-large teams, basically teams that could get in without winning their conference tournament. Right now on Bracket Matrix, there's only 10 teams on the list of other at-larges. That's it. There's no other teams even being slightly considered. And Boise State's on 2, Northwestern, BYU's on 2, Wake Forest on 3. Like, the only team that's really on the outside looking in that was being considered, there's 2. Texas and UCF. That's it. Even Arkansas somehow being considered. Cincinnati playing their way out. But all of these teams, and even if your team is not being mentioned in there, there's a possibility that you're going to see some weird, wacky decisions from the selection committee because the bubble is so freaking soft this year. If you go on a run, you could put this thing together and maybe find your way into the tournament. Currently, the top 4 seeds, so Auburn, Duke, Iowa State, and Tennessee is currently the other 1 seed, but that's probably going to be swapped with Alabama for most people. The 2
by the way, this was last updated January 18th.
Right. So it hasn't been fully updated, and either has ESPN's. Let me try to get the most updated one. I can't find an updated one. But 2 seeds, Marquette, Florida, Kentucky, Alabama was the other 2. You can drop Tennessee. So the top 8, I don't think are going to change. Wouldn't surprise me if Purdue moved up to the 3 seed line. We know Michigan State's going to be there. Probably Illinois. And maybe either A&M or Kansas, and I would assume Houston's going to be in there as well. The top 16 teams, it's pretty tough to break into that run there. So just something to consider, something to keep an eye on, and I would also keep an eye on, we're going to have some bid stealers this year, I think, from the Atlantic 10, definitely the Missouri Valley, because Bradley is good enough that I think they're going to make the tournament. Mountain West is going to have some bid stealers this year. The ACC could throw a massive wrench into this thing if Duke doesn't win at all. There's some big question marks. I mean, heck, Yale could make a run in the Ivy, not win it, somehow get the at-large. I think there's going to be some weird stuff from the selection committee this year in terms of selecting those at-large teams.
Yeah, Robbie, I don't know if people remember last year, my top story started about this time, going forward, was the bubble watch. So I'll start doing that next week for everyone, was my plan. So we'll look forward to talking that more. Yeah, I'm with you, Robbie. This bubble's interesting. I think a team now all of a sudden that could be includes Xavier after their big win.
Right.
They were 9-7 just 2 weeks ago, and they have some not good losses on there. By the way, other teams like Cincinnati, my Bearcats are still on there.
Oh, man.
I think Arkansas and Texas are combined 1-9 in the SEC, and they're 2 of the first 5 teams out.
How's Arkansas still being considered? They should not even be on anyone's bracket at all. And the fact that some people, the fact that some people have Arkansas in as a 10 seed is hilarious. That's crazy to me.
It's crazy. Yeah, this bubble's gonna be interesting. Like you said, last year we had a ton of bid sealers, like teams like Duquesne, Oregon,
New Mexico.
So that you can see that again this year.
Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot more of that this year. So we'll keep an eye on bracketology for you going forward, but wanted to give you a quick update on that front. So if you're one of those teams that's middling around, that like a Rutgers, if Rutgers gets hot, You could see them play their way into the tournament real quick with how soft that bubble is this year. And
Not you, though, Kansas State. Don't get your hopes
no,
up.
you can get all the way out of here, Kansas State. Just don't even come back. All right. Let's talk about the upcoming schedule. Tonight, there is a big college football game, but in the words of John Rothstein, there's basketball tonight. I'm not watching college football. Rutgers is at Penn State. Both those teams need that game. Both those teams desperately need it for their profile. It's a 6:30 p.m. Tip-off time on Peacock. Tuesday night's games, the big one to circle, it's Mississippi State at Tennessee. Can the Bulldogs go into Knoxville and beat the Volunteers? That's going to be a massive one. Ohio State is also at Purdue. Two big ones from the top 4 teams in the A-10. VCU is at Rhode Island, and George Mason's at St. Bonaventure. Those are some big ones. North Carolina, Wake Forest. You kind of feel like that's a bubble-bursting kind of game potentially for Wake Forest. If they lose that game, they could be in big trouble. Vandy goes to Bama. Oh, boy. We'll see how that one goes. And UCF's at Iowa State. Wednesday games. Florida's at South Carolina. That's a trap game for the Gators. Kansas at TCU. Longwood at Radford. That's a big one in the Big South. IU goes to Northwestern. Xavier at St. John's. Temple's at North Texas. Don't look now. Temple is starting to put together quite a season. Check out what the Owls have been doing lately. They got a big win this past week over Memphis, which was shocking. And then Texas A&M is at Ole Miss. That's another really good one. Thursday games. Big one in the America East. Dusty's Maine Black Bears on the road at UMass Lowell. Wow. UMass Lowell was a team that many thought would be second in the America East. Now they're kind of trying to play their way into it. UNCW at Charleston, Lipscomb's at North Alabama, Maryland at Illinois. St. Mary's, don't look now. The Gales are 6-0 in the West Coast Conference. They have the Dons of San Francisco at home. A big game in the Big West. UC Santa Barbara's at UC San Diego. And then Washington State at Santa Clara. Friday games, Michigan at Purdue, probably the big one of the bunch. Marquette hosts Villanova. Again, that loss from Marquette at home against Xavier was shocking. Saturday games, Mississippi State's at South Carolina. Big ones in the Ivy. Cornell at Princeton, Harvard at Yale. Those are pretty tasty. Miami, Ohio at Akron. Both those teams are 5-0 in the MAC. Kentucky goes to Vanderbilt. Oh, boy. Houston at Kansas. Tennessee at Auburn. UConn's at Xavier. Michigan State's at Rutgers. Texas A&M goes to Texas. We got the Lone Star Showdown back. Ole Miss at Mizzou. Duke goes to Wake Forest. A lot of really good games always on Saturday. And the Sunday games, Big Ten games, Maryland at IU, Northwestern at Illinois. Anything that stands out from that upcoming schedule, Nick, that you think should be highlighted?
Just Auburn, Tennessee for obvious reasons. Plus, is Broome going to be back for that game? I think it's just interesting.
Yeah,
but
Auburn,
the one that stands out to me, I think, is Duke at Wake Forest because will any ACC team knock them off and get that marquee win? I think Wake Forest has been good. I still have Hunter Salas really good. And you mentioned A&M. I don't think we've said this yet. Wade Taylor did come back Saturday. So
yes, he did. So that's a big get for A&M. Dusty, any games from this upcoming week that stand out outside of Tennessee at Auburn on Saturday night?
I like how the Ivy League is really starting to heat up and whatnot. Yeah, I mean, you mentioning Yale possibly in that large bid.
Yeah.
That would be insane. I wonder if the Ivy's last time they had an at-large bid. I'm sure it's happened before. But and then even if then we always talk about the Brown Bears and their ability to score. I know they got slaughtered by one of the non-conference. But the Ivy League, keep an eye on for the next 2 weeks. We'll do a breakdown of them in a couple weeks.
For sure. A lot of good games on the slate, so keep an eye on them. And obviously, we'll give our pick tonight for Ohio State, Notre Dame here in a moment. All right, to our locks. Not a great lock week for us. Outside of Dusty hitting his double parlay money line of Butler and Purdue Fort Wayne. The Mastodons needed double overtime, and Butler had to hang on late against Seton Hall. But Dusty now moves above 500 this year, 8-6, 13-10 overall. Nick and I both lost. Michigan, you can go completely all the way out of here. I mean, I thought I was playing the hits, and then you lose at Minnesota. Now, Dawson Garcia, great play. That was awesome, but still shocking to me. And then Kentucky losing to Alabama at home, so Nick's winning streak is over. But all of us are above 500 this year and above 500 overall, so those are all really good. So, Nick, I'm going to start with you. Get us started on the right foot. What's your lock for coming up this week?
Our favorite curmudgeon, Mick Cronin.
Ooh.
Again, ended his 4-game losing streak over the weekend. And they play Wisconsin at home on Tuesday. Wisconsin's on their second game of their West Coast trip. They did beat USC on Saturday. Shout out to them.
They did.
Again, Wisconsin on, not back-to-back, but They're second of 2 on the West Coast. UCLA finally got their schneid. Give me them minus 3.5. It says 3.5 right now, so you actually have a line for this one.
Wow.
Give me the Brew Crew and the Fighting Cronins.
So UCLA minus 3.5 against Wisconsin at home coming up Tuesday. My lock is also on Tuesday. Let me double check and see if there's a line. So if we're coming out with Tuesday lines, I wonder if my Tuesday line is going to be there as well. I didn't look partially just because I didn't think it would be on there until tomorrow. But so I love Iowa State at home. Oh my gosh, I just saw the line. Dusty, why don't you go? Give me your lock. I might have to change mine. It's 16.5 is Iowa State at home. That is a massive number.
Kansas being by 50, Robbie.
All right, fine. Lock it in. Iowa State minus 16.5 at home against UCF. They're going to run it up. They're pissed they lost to West Virginia. So there you go. Iowa State minus 16.5. Dusty?
Yeah, on the bubble, UCF. Mine is also Tuesday, so it's a big day.
Wow.
I hope the fans know it's because tomorrow's Hakeem Olajuwon's birthday, so got to have locks on that day.
Mm-hmm.
Ranking them, St. Bonaventures fell off the map. They have a big home game against first place George Mason tomorrow, and I think George Mason is making a 2006 vintage comeback.
Ooh.
George Mason plus 1.5 at St. Bonaventure.
Whoa!
Dusty, are you aware who George Mason's coach is?
It's not Jim Larinaga.
Is someone from the Final Four team, Skin. I can't remember his first
Tony
name right
Skin's the coach there now?
Oh,
yeah.
I did not know that.
That's sick.
How about that?
Play the hits.
Play the hits, baby. Okay, so you have George Mason plus 1.5?
At St. Bonaventure.
Wow, that's a big game. Yeah, George Mason, 14-5 overall, 5-1 in the conference. That's a big one for the Patriots. If they can get one over on the Bonnies, we'll see what happens. So there's your locks for this week. Nick, time to turn it over to you, my friend. Let's get funny and let's get weird. It's time for Nick's Funnies of the Week.
I've mentioned the last couple of shows, there's ebbs and flows. The past couple weeks been a little weaker, so don't worry. This week, I had so many. I didn't pick a winner. I wanted you guys to pick one. I have 5 nominees. They're all hilarious. So shout out College Basketball for bringing it this week. First off, Nick Cronin. Robbie mentioned his rant about the West Coast and all of that, blah, blah, blah. They finally got a win, and here's his quote afterwards. Quote, "I'm literally ready to jump off a bridge," close quote. He said about how miserable he's been about losing. Again, this was after a win, by the way. He says, "I'm ready to jump off a bridge." So shout out Mickey C., our favorite curmudgeon. We had a great game in the A-10 earlier this week, everyone.
Yeah.
The Massachusetts Minutemen took on the Fordham Rams.
Mm-hmm.
No, the Rams, right? Here's some stats for you guys. 238 points. 122 free throws. 9 players fouled out. 3 overtime.
Hold on. How many free throws were shot in this game?
122 free throws. Jalen Brunson's jealous of this. I don't think that many free throws in a basketball game. The most points ever scored in his gymnasium. Forgot to look up what it's called, but in his 100-year history, most points ever scored. But the icing on the cake, not just all these points. Cole Razul Diggins puked his brains out in the middle of the first half and then scored 46 points in this game. So you had all of that in one basketball game. 9 foul outs, 122 free throws, 1 guy puking and scoring 46 points. That is incredible. Shout out UMass Fordham.
This box score gives me hives.
Unreal, yeah.
Oh my. So UMass was 37 for 57 from the free throw line. Fordham was 48 for 65.
48 made free throws.
Oh my gosh. There were 79 fouls called. 79!
The game high score puked in the middle of the game. Like, what the hell was this basketball game? It's just incredible.
Rasul Diggins, a senior from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Former UConn Husky, by the way.
Okay, I thought I recognized that name.
Yeah.
So what it was. Hey, come on the pod, get your stomach issues figured out.
Seriously.
Game as well.
What I find funny in all of this, and this isn't even being talked about, what do you think Frank Martin thought watching this game? Because he is the head coach at UMass. Like, he's probably...
That's probably why the guy puked. Frank Martin was just running him dry for all these
Had
weeks.
to. Yeah, I vote that game. That's the winner for this week's Funny. That's insane.
There's a couple more ripped through. We have three more nominees. Two more quick ones. First of all, Dayton hit a game winner. If no one saw it afterwards, there's a chest bump, and one of the players got chest bumped, got sent like 12 feet backwards. It was a hilarious image. So shout out Dayton basketball for that. But two other funny ones. Do you want to see this? The Radford Gardner-Webb game. We had a little kid storm the court in the middle of the game.
I did see this. It was like a minute to go with it, too, yeah.
Minute 6 to go in the game, this 10-year-old kid just runs on the court. And the best part is, it's like Jim Valvano. Like, there's no one stopping him. This kid's just wreaking havoc.
Where's his parents?
We're security. We're parents. We're anything. And somewhere Jay Bills is so mad that kid stormed the court. So shout out that kid. Is back. One more. This one might be the funniest. This one's the only one might be able to compete with the UMass one. Here's the headline. Maine's A.J. Lopez hit a big three to beat NJIT, then shushed the crowd, made up entirely of school children on a field trip.
I saw this. This is great.
This man went full Russell Westbrook and shushed just a bunch of school kids just on a field trip. Got that dog in him. Shout A.J. Lopez.
Shushing 8-year-olds.
You got to teach him young, Robbie.
You tell him. Tell him, A.J.
Hey, the first place America East Maine Bears, baby. They got that bear in them. So shout out them. I think you're right, Robbie. I think UMass Fordham's probably the winner because of everything that went down, but this would be second place for me. Shushing little kids just always plays. So shout out to him.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Dusty, I mean, I'm picking the Fordham UMass game as my funny of the week. That's mine.
I haven't seen the video yet. I kind of like the idea of the kids just blatantly running on the court.
Yeah, go check it out.
And here you, and I just can imagine you would be like a media room, be like, "Oh, parents, who is it?"
And no security, no one came out on the floor. They just let it happen for 30 seconds. Finally, one of the players picked him up.
And don't forget, Mick Cronin after basketball game said, "quote I'm literally ready to jump off a bridge."
That is amazing.
Like, what the heck was going on?
Yeah, what are we doing? Oh my gosh, what a week of college hoops!
Great week.
My gosh,
chaos on Saturday, on and off the court.
Fantastic. Those are some funnies, some fantastic funnies of the week, Nick. Thank you. Time to turn our attention to Dusty as he goes back in time and enjoys reminiscing and revisiting his days of playing college basketball. It is Dusty's story time.
Also, someone give this kid a damn haircut. My God. Somebody was running away.
That's the funny of the week is his barber, evidently.
So this one might be a repeat story, but it's thanks to Mick Cronin inspired the story. Because I know I gave a good on-court story last week. I think the behind the scenes is almost the more interesting stuff. And the craziness of those coaches does come out. You hear some wild ones, you see some wild ones. I'd say most stories are probably worse than what you hear because they do get edited. But I'm going to tell you one of my favorite Billy Gillispie lines of all time. So for those that don't know, I played for Billy Gillispie at Kentucky. He was there 2 years. I was there 1. Quite trying to say my words correctly, a little crazy. I'll just leave it at that.
Mm-hmm.
Had actions that I mean, I can't tell you how many times the AD had to come talk to us and say, hey, this happened with coach. Please don't. If you get asked about the media, please keep your mouth shut. So Gillespie was known to he was never physically abusive. I always say that, but played mind games. And then, I mean, the only thing at the time was when he made Josh Harrelson go sit on the toilet at Vanderbilt, which is just funny at halftime because he was playing like but my favorite story about a verbal diss by Gillespie is I had a teammate. He's actually going to the SEC tournament this year named AJ Stewart. And AJ was constantly getting kicked off the team. And whether that was for altercations with females in the practice center or not going to class or just acting out in practice, AJ's one of my favorite people, but he was a little mature when we were freshmen. And so AJ gets kicked off the team, and basically what we do as a team is we'd all come together, go to Gillespie's office, and just say, hey, coach, what if you get AJ or Perry or Matt Stravinsky, whoever back on the team? And he would use the power and say things like, okay, everyone has 50 more study hall hours this week and stuff like that, 20 more hours of practice. So, I mean, we were destroying NCAA practice hour laws or regulations. So, but my favorite thing is we walk in there, it's the whole team, we're in our practice jerseys, and he said no practice today because he told us we're going to forfeit the upcoming game. And we're just like, okay, well, you're already on the dogs, the hot seat. We know that's not going to happen. So he's sitting there, and he's leaned back in his chair, very much a power move. He has his feet up on the chair, or on his desk, and he's watching horse racing on 2 different TVs, mind you not. So he was having the time of his life. Probably didn't want to practice. And we gave the whole thing, gives us what we have to do. And then he says he doesn't even look at anyone on the team. He just keeps staring at the TV, and he said, you guys, you fellas follow horse racing. And I think like Mark Curry raised his hand or something like that. And he said, yeah. I love horse racing. Do you guys know what they do to horses that act out of line?
Oh, no.
No, same thing is they chop off their balls. If AJ Stewart was a horse, I'd be chopping off his balls right now.
Oh, my gosh.
An insane quote. Like a stoke face, because he's just having some shears in the corner or something.
Oh gosh, he should. That I was hoping that the next story would be the next practice. He just comes out and goes and brings out those shears and just starts so it's like moving them back and forth. Like, all right, guys, time to practice.
I would not put that past him.
By the way, the Josh Harrelson thing that gets on his Wikipedia, it's so funny. It describes the whole thing, about him in the stall. And he had riding the equipment van the way home from the game. That's what it says.
Oh my gosh. Gosh, Billy Gillespie, my word.
Oh, what a guy.
And praying for his health issues because he's going through a lot, and that is sincere. Funny story, but 15 years I have no ill against the man, so I hope he's healthy.
Go coaching.
Yep. Yeah, wish him the best for sure.
Go
All
coaching
right.
on Open State, D1, shout out.
That's right. Yes, indeed. All right, end of show shout-outs. Nick, for you, start it off.
I'm disappointed. We have 3 white gentlemen here, and no one shout out a great Martin Luther King Jr. It is Martin Luther King Jr. Day, one of the greatest men of all time. Shout out to him. Really not much more to add. His speech, "I Have a Dream," speech, the best one of all time. If you ever get the chance, please listen to it. But I do have a criticism, though, of the NBA. The Hawks every year should have a home game on Martin Luther King Jr. Day.
Yes.
And not this year, and a lot of people assume it's because the national championship's there tonight in Atlanta, so they, I guess, avoided that for traffic
Yeah,
reasons.
that makes sense.
BS. They should make the Lions on Thanksgiving. The Hawks should have a home game every single year. So shout out MLK Jr. and anti-shout out to Adam Silver.
Love that.
Take that, Adam.
Speaking of it being MLK Day, shout out to Morehouse College defeating Howard today in men's college basketball, 79-76. Morehouse, the Maroon Tigers, not a Division I program, beat the Bison. So big deal for them. Shout out to them.
The Maroon Tigers?
The Maroon Tigers, that's right. Not just regular Tigers, Maroon Tigers. So shout out to them. Dusty, your end of show shout out?
This is a name that I've seen so many times. You'll probably know it, Robbie, but I've never pronounced it. Been on tonight's national championship. The other shout out to, is it Ara Parseghian?
Ara Parseghian, yeah.
Parseghian, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Named so many times. He's one of the Holy Trinity of Notre Dame coaches, second winningest record of all time. I found it behind Newt Rockby. I found it crazy that the reason he got here is because his dad fled the Ottoman Empire in 1950 to get away from the Armenian genocide during World War I, and somehow landed in Akron, Ohio.
Of all the places to land after fleeing the Ottoman Empire, Akron.
So,
and we're anti-Ottoman Empire on this pod.
Correct,
by the way.
yes.
I didn't either. And then a long career too. And also, I was this days old when I found that Miami, Ohio used to be the Redskins.
Yes, before they were the Red Hawks, yes.
First place he coached. So, all-time 170-58 record, 6 amazing ties. Died actually in his hometown of Granger, Indiana at 94 peacefully.
Indeed. Ara Parseghian. Is it? It's either Parseghian or Parseghian. It's either one. But so yeah. I mean, if you've seen the movie Rudy, he is featured in that. So
he added Rudy to the team the year before.
Correct.
I'm on the practice squad because he loved his tenacity. I read
exactly. Yeah. So he was a pretty likable character in that movie, and then Dan Devine came in and was the one who actually played Rudy. Some people don't actually realize, as much as we think of sports movies as not being real. The Rudy movie is actually very, very close to exactly how everything kind of played out. Now, the players coming in and laying their jerseys down, that's a little bit more cinematic. But everything else on top of that, like Rudy actually got a sack in his last game playing against Georgia Tech. Like that all is cataloged and real and actually happened. So I can appreciate that. As much as I despise Notre Dame and Ohio State's going to win by 1,000,000 tonight, I can appreciate that, and Rudy is a fantastic sports film.
Also, he would be a mentor of Lou Holt.
Yes, indeed, he was. Say that again for me.
Lou Holt.
That's right.
Tonight's Ryan Day versus Lou Holt.
What?
Tonight's Ryan Day versus Lou Holt.
Oh, that's right. It is.
Rivalry renewed.
Didn't think about that. So, yeah. Are we?
One final thing that's hilarious. So,
sure.
I'm spacing. Who's the really funny comedian that's
Shane Gillis.
Shane Gillis was on McAfee today.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's at the game tonight, big Notre Dame family. And he said he's alive, so it can be funny. After the Northern Illinois loss, his dad had a heart attack.
Oh, gosh.
And that's what McAfee says. He says, no, he's right over there. He's good now. But he was pronounced with a heart attack after losing Northern Illinois.
By the way, I mean, I feel like Shane Gillis is just a prototypical Notre Dame fan that did not go to Notre Dame, had some sort of family member that may or may not have gone there. My favorite one is the fact that, I didn't have any family members, but they went to St. Mary's of the Woods, so, it's close enough. Or they're from South Bend. Like 95% of the Notre Dame fans on this earth did actually not go to Notre Dame. So, honestly, this is probably the, what'd you say?
That's including me tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, this is probably the greatest national championship game in the history of college football, where most of the fans did not actually go to the school that's going to be playing in it. So a good amount of Ohio State fans that did not go to Ohio State, but even more that did not go to Notre Dame. So,
hey, but by the way, shout us three. We all root for college teams that we attended the school.
That's right.
I would consider that.
Yeah,
Someone's got to be from there.
Put some respect on our names.
Mm-hmm.
We stick with what we got.
Well,
all right, that'll do it for this episode of the D1 and Done Pod. Make sure, again, follow us on our social media pages, and we have new episodes coming out every Monday night. And then we have our Check Please show, which we will plan on having out every Thursday, a little midweek check-in, 20, 30 minutes, just to revisit what we may or may not have missed. So we hope you've enjoyed listening to this episode of the D1 and Done Pod. For Nick Mills, for Dusty Mills, I'm Robbie Donahoe. Go Bucks. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.
Keep your head up, Cal.
No, don't. Don't keep your head up, Cal.